So the untrained eye may be like, huh, well, it just looks like there's something hanging down. But I want you to notice something. Look how far the tire sticks out over here versus how far the tire sticks out right here. So these right here, these are the coil spring retainers. And what happens with these is you have these two brackets and one plops right there. And then you put some welds around it. And then you just pop this one right there where it's parallel with this side right here. So it's pretty simple stuff. You don't really need to put any welds on the outside. You need to put them on the inside. That way it doesn't come in contact with your spring and, you know, give you a weird ride height or something, I don't know. But I'm just gonna put some welds on the inside. There's no weight, there's no really force applying to this. So you don't have to go crazy, but just a couple of stitch welds will be fine. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack weld it, and then I'm actually gonna put my spring on here just to make sure that it's not coming in contact with anything and making sure that it comes inside of this dent. So you can see right here, it's got a channel in the metal. That is for your spring to go in. So I'm just gonna pop this right here, get it squared up, and then I'm going to put a couple of tacks on it and then test the spring. I've got it pretty much where I want it, and now I'm just going to put a little tack on the edge. That way, I'm not gonna do it on the inside, that way in case I have to cut it off, I don't have to come in here with a grinder, I can just come to the edge. Like I always say, when you do your tack welds, do your tack welds where you can take them off the easiest. So now I'm gonna take my spring, line it up. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. Sweet. So, like I said, I'm just gonna put some stitch welds on the inside, and we'll call this good once I put the cap on it. So now I'm gonna take this piece right here, drop it on. It's really hot. All right, so now I'm just gonna put a couple of tack welds on this, put my spring back on just to verify that I haven't screwed up or anything like that. All right. Oh man, that is so sick. Yeah, so that works really good. So now I'm going to just weld up all the way around so that way I know that it's going to be nice and strong. This has literally taken me all day because I've had to weld a little bit here, let it cool, and then come back to it, weld some more, let my welder cool off. This has just been a very, very tedious process, but it's gonna be all worth it when it's done because we know that it's done right. Like I said before, I'm just keeping it where I can keep my hands on it. It's still pretty warm down there, so I'll jump down to this side. And the next thing that I'm gonna work on, or I'm gonna get these sway bar brackets on. So Arctic has this cool little bracket right here, and there's a tab right there on the front of this coil spring mount. And so that tab goes in like that. And then this piece, there's a tab right there. There's a tab right there, and there's an insert right there. And it just pops right in. So it basically just gets rid of all the guesswork, which is really nice in situations like this. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tack it on, and then I'm gonna pop this coil spring in just to make sure that I have the proper tolerances and clearances that I need. She's my best. Now I'm gonna pop this coil spring in. Nasty coil spring. Oh man, that is gold. That looks really good. So much room. So now that I know that the coil spring is gonna work, I'm just gonna come in and fully weld all this up. So this side, I'm gonna have to get a little creative on. This is the passenger side, and I'm trying to get the sway bar mount welded on, but there are some issues that I'm facing. So this bracket is, this is set up for a under the axle track bar bracket, and obviously we have the over the axle. So I'm gonna have to be careful where I put this, because I'm gonna try to use these steering stabilizer brackets that mount to this. So what happens is it has a tab right there. The tab goes somewhere like that. And then this tab right here goes on like that. So there's like a million things going on, and everything's like fighting me. So I'm gonna try to make it clear like right here and go out, but you probably won't have this issue on yours unless you were running a over the axle track bar mount. But before I do that, I'm going to check the degree and the actual angle of the driver side. That way I can make sure that the sway bar mount on the driver and passenger side are the exact same. I've got this tacked on, and this is the old steering stabilizer. And I'm just going to, does this bolt fit? This bolt will work just fine. So I'm going to drop a bolt in just like that, and shorts. So as of right now, this is not correct. I have a huge gap down here that I have to fix, but check this out. I can put the steering stabilizer in just like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack weld this up a little bit more, and then I'm going to come in here with some metal and fill it in. That way it is super strong and super functional. So this is awesome. So whenever you're putting a bunch of aftermarket parts together, sometimes you're going to have to do some crazy fabrication. I say crazy, I'm going to be cutting like a little strip of metal, but you get what I'm saying. You can see right here where I put in that little piece of metal, that way it would fill that gap in, and then I just did 2 passes right there. So now I'm just going around and just welding this up real slow. You can obviously see it's going to be close. I may actually have to run the steering stabilizer backwards. That way the shaft is right here. Can you run steering stabilizers backwards? I don't know. So the next thing that I'm going to work on are these shock mounts. And I should have done this before I welded these on, but the steering stabilizer is the same width at the end as the shocks that are on the Jeep. So I'm just going to be using this as a template, but basically it comes with a little bracket. So you can just slide up in here and just tack it on like that once you get a bolt in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting a washer in there just to give me a little bit of breathing room once everything is all welded up. So I'm just gonna start that and push this up. Just like that. I'm just going to get this squared up. That's flush, so it's got a little tapered edge right there, so you know if that tapered edge is flush and it's flush on the bottom, then it's where it needs to be. Now I'm just going to put a little tack, and then I'm gonna check everything. Just going to verify that everything fits, and it does. So that is perfect. So now I'm just going to go ahead and weld this all up. Oh, baby. So that is basically all the welding on this axle except for to the cast. So now that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and start preheating this cast. Typically you want to get it anywhere around 400 degrees. I don't know where my temperature gauge is, so we're just going to be winging it today. But if you plan on doing this, go ahead and get a good temperature gun. That way you can kind of not overheat it and make sure it's not too cold. I've been welding on this axle pretty much all day, and there's nothing really hot on it right now. So we're about to change that. So I'm going to be using MAP gas to heat it up. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do one section at a time. So say for instance, like right here, I'm just going to do about maybe like 3-inch intervals, just kind of centralize the heat, not have to heat up the whole axle, because I really don't want to mess up seals or anything like that. So if you've never welded cast to steel, whenever you weld dissimilar metals, you need to look up the proper way to do it. When you weld cast to steel, this cast is going to cool down a lot faster than this steel does, and then it'll crack. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat it up, weld it, and then I'm going to ping it. I'm going to take maybe a hammer or a chisel, and I'm going to start tapping that metal and start shocking it. And that way I know it won't crack. It's going to be super strong. I don't know the really scientific method for that. It's just kind of like some old dude taught it to me. And that's just what I've been doing my whole welding career, I guess. And after I ping it, I'm going to start post heating. I'm going to hit it with some fire again, and I'm going to wrap it up, a welding coat or a welding blanket, and that way I know that it'll kind of contain the heat. It'll cool down nice and slow, and that's really going to be the difference between a good weld and a failed weld. Check it out. I've got all of the welds on the entire axle done. Holy crap. That was a lot of work. But it's going to be super worth it knowing that this axle is correct now, and it's 80 times stronger than what it was when it came in here. So what I'm going to do now is I've been post heating it. So I don't know if you saw in the videos, like if I was welding right here, I'd bank over here just a little bit and heat this side back up and vice versa. But now what I'm going to do is get all this crap out of the way. But now what I'm going to do is get a welding coat and just wrap up the axle and let it sit until it is completely cool to the touch. Because right now she's warm. So I'm going to show you how I wrap this thing up. I couldn't find my welding blanket, so I'm just going to get some welding coats. Maybe they won't ignite. I don't really care. So I'm just gonna wrap this up really good and just throw some hoodies on it. Found this Carhartt coat. That's perfect. As long as it's thick and insulated. So I'm just gonna try to get rid of any air pockets in there. And I know some people, they'll put ratchet straps around it just to keep everything squeezed up, but I really don't care that much. I know that this is gonna be fine, and this is probably overkill anyway, so we're just gonna let this sit, and we'll come check on it in a couple hours. Yeah, I'm gonna go get a shower.
Shampoo is better. I go on first and clean the hair.
So the axle has been just chilling in the shop for probably 4 or 5 hours. So we're gonna uncover it and just double check that there's not any cracks or anything weird going on. Like, it's a little bit warmer than room temperature. Like, it's like lukewarm. That's nuts. But man, I think those welds turned out great. I just got to clean them up just a little bit with a wire wheel, which is probably what I'm gonna do now. And I'm gonna go ahead and clean out, I'm gonna take the diff cover off, and I'm gonna go ahead and clean out these axle tubes because they're pretty gross. So I've got everything wiped. I've got everything cleaned up and wiped down with some brake cleaner. And I went through, and on the inside of my coil retainers, where the channel is for the coil spring to sit in, I went in and took my belt sander and just sanded off any slag, because you want that coil spring to be seated properly. You don't want it to be, so even like a little piece of slag can try to push that coil spring out of its way, and you definitely don't want that. So now I've got everything cleaned up, and now I'm going to paint it. And what I like to do with axles like this, I like to use just some Rust-Oleum oil-based. I like to brush it on just because I feel like it just goes on a lot thicker, and it lasts a lot better than spray paint. Spray paint really doesn't last that long, and it doesn't go on as thick. So what I like to do is I like to get one of these little paint brushes like this, and just start just going around. And I like to put it on very, very thick. I don't want any of these welds to start rusting, and I don't want him to ever have to paint this axle again. It's gonna be messy, and it's not gonna be very pretty, but I promise you it'll be worth it when it's all said and done. Take a look at my masterpiece. This was a huge pain in the butt. My hands are cramping so bad from painting. I did have to spray paint some. I just used some of my Seymour paints down there. It's oil-based, so it goes really good with this and looks the exact same. But so like places like in there, I had to spray paint. And then there was some little crevices back in there I had to spray paint. And then I spray painted the knuckles, and then I spray painted inside the tubes. So yeah, this thing is definitely not gonna rust ever again. I'm going to let this dry overnight, and then tomorrow we're gonna get that Aussie locker in. Then we can start putting this Dana 30 back together and get it back to the Comanche. So here we are the next day, and this turned out great. I mean, this looks like it's powder coated or something. but it's still a little tacky. So I'm going to move along now and walk over here to my carrier, and we're going to go ahead and get this Aussie locker in. So if you've never done one of these Aussie lockers, they're super simple. They're made in the USA. They're actually made by Torque Master Industries, and Torque is a well-known name brand. I have a Torque locker in front of my Gladiator that I literally drive every day. So Aussie and Torque lockers are pretty awesome, and they're really easy to go in. So the first thing that I'm going to do is, well, first off, if you're doing this yourself, you want to use a clean surface, a cleaner surface than what I have here. And then you also want to, whenever you take this out, you want to make sure you keep up with your caps and make sure that the caps go back on the same side. So I have my driver and passenger side caps over there. And you do have to remove the ring gear on here. So what I like to do is I like to just mark on here, so that way I can put the ring gear the same way that it comes off. I put it back on that way. So you can either take a paint pen or you can just mark it with a chisel, a cold chisel or something like that. But I'm gonna go ahead and probably clean this up a little bit. So I'm gonna go ahead and start taking the ring gear bolts off. I did mark it right there. All right, so the next thing that I'm gonna do now that I have the ring gear out of the way, I can just come in here and just kind of clean up. You want this to be a very clean process. And some people like to wear gloves, but if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know I don't like to wear gloves because whenever I work on stuff like this, I like to feel if there's any grit. So like if I was taking this apart and I noticed like, man, there's a lot of grit, then I know I need to clean more. There's actually a little keyway right there. There's a little pin that we have to punch out, and that is gonna let this cross pin come out. So the cross pin right there that holds the spider gears. So I'm going to find my punch and go ahead and knock that all the way out. So I got my little brass punch right here. I got the pin out, and ended up I ended up hitting it the other way from this side right here. I don't know why I was trying to hit it the other way. I don't know. So now I should be able to take the cross pin here and just push it out. So you can see here. Come on, you turd. Just like that. Now the spider gears should rotate and all come out. Useless spider gears. Yeah, make sure all the washers come out. So now that I have everything all cleaned up in here, I went ahead and cleaned up the side thrust washers. You will be using these right here. But the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this side piece right here. I'm gonna take the thrust washer and put on there, and then I'm gonna take some red and tacky. You know I love some good old American red and tacky. I'm just gonna put some right along there. That way it'll stick. I'll put on both sides of that actually. All right, so this is gonna be feeding up just like that. And see, with the red and tacky, it stays up there. Red and tacky is like defying gravity. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing on the bottom. Just a little bit of red and tacky on there. Pop that on, a little bit of red and tacky. I'm gonna slide that on in there. Now I'm gonna take this bottom piece right here. So you just wanna make sure that you put the teeth against the teeth. So it's got grooves on the side right there. It's got flat spots. So that flat spot will slide in the carrier just like that. Oh yeah. Now I'll take this, get some red and tacky on here, all around. just like that. And so now the same thing, flat side against flat side. It goes right in there perfectly. So basically it goes just like that. It goes just like this. And so the grooves that are on the inside of the locker is what the spring goes in. So you'll hear it kind of click in, but that's basically what you want to see right there, is that it's perfectly seated. So I've got 3 more to do, so I can just spin the locker around and go ahead and get the rest of these 3 in. So I got all the springs in, and so now I am ready to put the cross pin in. So I'm just going to clean it up really good. And then I've got to put some of that good old American red and tacky on there. And I'm actually going to put a little bit of red and tacky inside of the hole there. That way it kind of lubricates that hole. Just slide this in. It should go right in. You shouldn't have to use nothing more than your fist. And I'm just going to line up the hole right there, lining up that hole, verifying that I can see all the way through it. And now I'm going to take this cleaned cotter pin, put a little bit of red and tacky on that, not drop it. So now I just need to clean up my surface area on the ring gear, and I'm going to hit this with some brake cleaner, and then I'm going to clean up the ring gear, and then I'm going to pop it on. So I'm just going to drop that on, and it's always good practice whenever you put the ring gear bolts back in to put some red Loctite on there. Alright, so got the ring gear all torqued down properly to the correct specs, and now we're ready to put the carrier back in the Dana 30. So I have everything cleaned out before I even come anywhere near bringing this over here. I did spray all of this with brake cleaner, and I did go ahead and clean everything and keep it on the same sides. So I know that this side goes right here and this side goes over here. So now I will put everything inside of the differential. So you just want to make sure that this is seated before you put the caps on. And so now I'm just verifying that everything is clean. I'm verifying of my 3 dots on this side, my 4 dots on the bottom. That way I know that I'm installing it the exact way that I took it out. So I'm just going to get those started. I'm going to do the same thing. Got 1 dot here and 2 dots here. So that way if I ever come back to this axle for whatever reason, then I know that these are already marked. So I mark mine like, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and torque down these bolts. So the next thing I'm going to do is get these axle shafts in. I did a spray paint rebuild on these, and I did clean them, but I'm just going to send those in there, get them lined up. Look at that. So now I'm just going to be putting this bushing in up here, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Just get some red and tacky and put on there, and it just goes in just as simple as that. And then you push this in there. And that's good. And I'm going to go ahead and get some red and tacky on basically everything. Now this axle could go in the Jeep, and I think that's what we are about to do. I may go ahead and put the hubs on, but basically what I'm going to do is just reverse what I did in the earlier part of the video. So last night it was pouring down rain and I really couldn't talk to the camera. Very loud in here. Raining. So I had put the camera up on the tripod and was just gonna do a time lapse of us putting the axle in. Sorry about that. But as you can see, yeah, the axle is underneath the Jeep. We have it squared up. So we have the track bar centered. I have the caster right at 6 degrees. I have the pinion angle correct. So yeah, really now I have to put the drive shaft in. I have to put the sway bar back on, put the steering on, the drag link, tie rod. And yeah, this is almost done. So this is 1,000 times better than it was before it came in my shop. But look at that. Look how good it looks. Sway bar links and just run in just like that. Now I've got to find the nuts for that, and then I'm going to work on getting that drive shaft in. So we ended up cutting off this crappy mount that was right there for the steering stabilizer, and plus it shortened it up and it just made it look a lot cleaner like this, and ended up just kind of adjusting everything and putting a fresh coat of paint on it. And I'm pretty satisfied. So I did torque everything down on the ground, and then I got it back up in the air and just kind of went over everything just to make sure that everything was tight and torqued properly. So that's what I like to do. I like to tighten everything on the ground and then lift it back up in the air and just go over it, and that way I can visually see that everything is seated properly. I did go around and grease everything. Well, actually I didn't, Patrick did. Thanks, Patrick. So being that I pretty much had put everything new back on the axle, got some new unit bearings because the other ones were pretty trashed. But as you can see, you've got the unit bearings all ready to go in. So yeah, so now I'm just gonna go ahead and pop those back in. Look, we got a little shop dog in here. I think he's looking for the cat. Stretch, what are you doing, boy? So I just got back from road testing the Comanche and it did great. I got it to about 55 miles an hour, which, and it was holding still. I mean, it wasn't wandering or anything like that. So I'm satisfied with it, and I know that the owner is going to be super excited about it. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I really appreciate y'all watching me put together this front axle on this Jeep Comanche here. It was a lot of work and it was a lot of tedious work, but I definitely think that it was worth it. And I know it's going to be worth it to the owner whenever he comes and gets to drive it home. But anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all watching. If you don't mind, hit that like button and make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss out on any other content that I put out on my channel. But we'll see y'all next week on 6 Feet Under Fab.